Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 198 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me, as always, is the meanest hostess ever, Aaron Paulette. How are you doing, Aaron?
I feel like I should really address the whole meanest ever, but I got nothing right now.
I'll dive in your own defense. Erin is not mean. Erin is nice. She's nice to me the way I want people to be nice to me. So she's mean, and she's good at it. And those that listen to they see people who are often hear you go, I'm normally not this mean, but you seem to like it so much.
I'm over it. And by it, I just everything. I am so done. And I'm dealing with family drama that I briefly touched on in my most recent blog thing. And okay, so like Elon Musk has bought Twitter, and everyone has been talking about that. And people on one side of the political spectrum have been freaking out, and people on the other side have been laughing about the freak out. And I'm just here going, I don't know why I'm wired differently, but I don't find this funny. It's a case of the ones who are freaking out are pretty demonstrably wrong. Why does this wrongness not offend you? I can't laugh at it. Mm-hmm. And so there's just a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I'm just, whatever.
To quote the great American philosopher Aaron Paulette, Twitter, or to paraphrase the great philosopher Aaron Paulette, Twitter needs a cleansing fire.
and I think Elon is going to do that.
I hope so. I was talking about this in another group, but I was saying that we were discussing on whether or not we believe that he was going to be for good or for ill to Twitter. And I noted that he has had many occasions to be a tyrant. He has had, he's been at the head of several companies, and he very much has the option to be an awful boss. And on all accounts, it seems like he really hasn't been. And so I don't see how Twitter will be different, but there's always the chance that, here's the point where he goes mad with power.
On the other hand, I have loathed Twitter for over a decade and been very vocal about that. So if it fails and goes bankrupt, I'm also fine with this. Mm-hmm. So I can't really say I don't care. It's more a case of I'm just rooting for injuries. No matter what happens, I will be entertained, and I will be eating a sandwich and, drinking tea. So, that's it.
Yep. Well, my daughter is back from Maine, and as I was saying to my wife, brace yourself. We always think we're going to be ready for when she comes back, and we never are. Comes in like a cute little hurricane. But life is back to normal and back to school, and so that's the extent of my dull life. So, we got a little bit of news to talk about, and a whole bunch of segments. So shall we dive into it, Aaron?
Sure. I'm so enthusiastic. I know.
Well, yeah, this one really I just want to touch on so briefly is there was a we'll call it a spree shooting. I was about to say attempted spree shooting, but no, it was a successful spree shooting. It just was not a mass shooting per the FBI's definition, thank goodness, where somebody got themselves up in an elevated position, looks like maybe it was an apartment or a dorm room, and fired down at a school with appears to be AR-15 rifles.
And where was this shooting?
This was in Washington, D.C.
but that's impossible, Weer'd. DC has very stringent gun control.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and some of the magazines there's an evidence photo in there of and some of the magazines are the Surefire quad stack mags. But yeah, there were 4 people injured, none of them killed, as far as I know. Which, honestly speaking, I'm kind of surprised on, because also, number one, so we had the New York City subway shooter, and that guy I think killed 2 people, but he was also only just using a 9mm, and very possibly could have been using ball ammo. This guy's using rifles, and so it's just surprising. But one of the big things that no one seems to be talking about is, I saw there was a video that showed up that was allegedly from the shooter. It looked like it was actually being like videotaped through one of the scopes, and it was firing fast enough that I was looking, when I saw the evidence photo come through, I was looking for bump stocks on the guns, because it's kind of sounded like a bump stock being fired. It was fairly quick, and quick enough that you could do it with your own finger, but not so much. But one of my friends pointed out, because I don't really look for such things, but at least the photo's not super high resolution, but you can clearly see in one of the ARs. Yeah, that's a third hole. There's the auto sear pin right there. So it could be mocked up, or it could be a cosmetic feature added to that lower, but it sure looks like a full auto, and that's not really being talked about at all. And nobody even talks about like the way he was shooting. So, but either way, the shooter got away, but briefly, and ended up taking their own life. Good riddance. And I don't know. I don't think there's anything else to talk about that. It just seems it's just another fishy shooting, just like the one in New York. And so we will move over to the story that you sent me, Aaron. It's a delicious one. Would you like to take it?
Okay. So this comes to me courtesy of John Richardson from No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money. And it is, speaking of Twitter, our very good friend David Hogg,
best friend,
had a series of tweets. And let me see if I can do this without causing you to have to edit. And this is nested here. So he starts off saying, F it, if legally buying off all of Congress and every state legislature through political donations is what can get us to pass gun control, then we'll do just that. We can't wait 50 years for Dems to get their crap together and for SCOTUS to change. Then he replied to himself, if you have a couple extra billion you don't need, hit me up and we'll make some actual effing change for once. Nothing drives bipartisanship like being owned by the same donor, smiley face. Now, all that's preamble, because someone replied to that saying, isn't Michael Bloomberg doing exactly this? Michael Bloomberg, who owns and runs Everytown and Mom's Demand and
March for Our Lives, which David Hogg used to be a member of.
Thank you. And so David Hogg replies to this, that's only several $100 million, and the organization is quite ineffective for how much money they get. Like, almost shockingly ineffective. And
I find it amusing that this is the former CEO of the Good Pillow. The Good Pillow that was so well executed and so efficient that, number one, they have not and will not produce even a prototype pillow that they are for them to sell, and they don't even own their own name.
So yeah, I don't know, because you theorized for a while that David Hogg had oh my god, I can't talk. We'll try this again. So, Weer'd, a while ago, you theorized that David Hogg had gotten on Bloomberg's bad side, and maybe he had said or done the wrong thing, or just wasn't towing the party line, but for whatever reason, you theorized that Bloomberg had kicked Hogg to the curb, which is why he really hadn't been doing a lot and had been pretty irrelevant. And then this happens, where he is burning a bridge, and maybe there wasn't any point in keeping that bridge. But I do find it interesting that David Hogg basically called out Bloomberg and said, you are completely ineffective and you're wasting the money that you spend. And I don't know what's going to happen next. Honestly, Bloomberg is probably just going to ignore him.
Yeah.
But if, something gets released or Hogg accidentally falls down some stairs, I think we're going to know what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it really just depends on how petty Bloomberg wants to get, and I'm sure you can wax eloquent on just how petty he is.
Yeah, I mean, actually, honestly speaking, you don't see a whole lot of retaliatory stuff with Bloomberg. You just see the people fall from his good graces. Essentially, Bloomberg's the person that you suck up to because it pays to suck up to Bloomberg, and then if you stop sucking up to Bloomberg, then Bloomberg doesn't pay you any mind, and you don't get his money and his favor and his free press. And that's certainly where I thought David Hogg went wrong in the first place. Is he was the one Parkland kid who would speak while wearing the March for Our Lives shirt at the March for Our Lives events, but then also looked like he was setting up interviews outside of March for Our Lives so that he could essentially further his own brand. And so, yeah, I find it ironic that he's like, oh no, Bloomberg isn't doing it right, but somehow, Bloomberg is a self-made billionaire. Like, say what you will about the man. He was born upper middle class, but he then turned it around into being one of the wealthiest men in the world through hard work and all that. He earned that money, and that is to be respected. And David Hogg is also born upper middle class and appears to be doing a very, very excellent job at just losing lots and lots of money and being generally unlikable. So there's that. But also, I think there's a bigger picture. I really think, and this is always something that my mother-in-law and I get into discussions about this, because she's firmly in the camp of we need more campaign finance reform and we need more rules that restrict how people can donate and all that. And I don't personally believe in that, because I see people like Michael Bloomberg who have all of these different shell corporations and political action groups and all of that stuff. And he dumps like tons and tons and tons and tons of money into an issue. Like in Maine, when they pushed the universal background check referendum question, Bloomberg literally bought up all of the airtime. So you only heard anti-gun campaign commercials for universal background checks, and there was never an opposite side to that. There was never a why we should oppose universal background checks, and it still got shot down by 15 points. So I really think that money is good for getting your message out there and getting people to know you who have no idea who you are. But once people know the issue, there's really not much you can do to sway them. You can't buy an election if people just don't like what you're doing. And, taking guns away from people is not a good way to win.
Yeah, especially not for the past 2 years.
No.
That's all I got, man. Look, I'm here. This is what you get. These are the jokes, folks.
Don't worry, Aaron. One more interesting story is, and I'll only touch briefly on this because I think we'll cover it more next week. But I just wanted to point out that there is currently at this time there is a head of the ATF is a black man named Marvin Richardson. And the Biden campaign has now demoted him, essentially claiming that he's been too cozy with the quote-unquote gun lobby. Citation needed for all of that. And
translation, he actually likes guns and probably has a good relationship with gun owners and gun manufacturers.
Yeah, his crime is he is not a flaming prick to gun owners and the gun industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is just bad news, because not only like he's been floated by some people as a very potentially good permanent director for the ATF, just because of how nonpartisan and middle of the road he is. He's not a super hardcore pro 2A guy that's doing all the favors for the gun industry, but also at the same time he's also not eating from the Michael Bloomberg trough. And so some people have suggested that, and from all I heard, it sounds like he would be just fine. But it turns out that no, you need to be actively against the Second Amendment to be in the good graces of the Biden administration. And so even though he is planning on retiring very soon, and in theory, all they would need to do is just ignore him and he would go away by the end of the year. But no, they had to demote him, which also means that when he does retire, his pension's going to get screwed up for the rest of his life, because he will retire at a lower level than how he's operating right now. And it's just obnoxious.
One of the things that's worth pointing out is that this current acting director is not Caucasian. He's African American.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been outcry, because here is a man who has been doing his job for quite a long time and is respected by the people under him and the gun companies that he has to work with, and is a minority. And the current nominated person for ATF, whatever, God, I'm so eloquent, is a white man. David Chipman prior was a white man. Not only have they ignored this black man, but now they have demoted him.
Yeah, and I will further note that, just to draw another line, is that David Chipman was withdrawn as the ATF director nominee in part because several disciplinary actions where it was believed that he mistreated black agents working under him were brought forward. And in this day and age, that is not a good place to be. And
mm-hmm.
I will note that I find it impossible to believe that the Biden administration had not seen those disciplinary actions when they were vetting him before they announced him as the nominee. So this stinks, because you've got a black man and you've got an administration that loves gun control, that loves anti-gun lobbyists, and also seems to be just fine with mistreatment of blacks. And this is just another black being mistreated. But I'm going to transition very roughly into speaking of race-based gun policy. I recently read an interview where the National African American Gun Association was cited as being opposed to Georgia's constitutional carry laws. This didn't sit well with me, so I called the group's president, Phillip Smith, to get his side of the story. So I am pleased to welcome back to the Assorted Calibers podcast, Phillip Smith of the National African American Gun Association. How you doing, Phillip?
Great, and glad to be here. Excited to have a conversation today.
So let's get down to brass tacks here. I saw this article. It was published by a bunch of different groups out here, news agencies. You're living in Georgia.
That's correct.
And it says here, pro-gun group emphasizes training and teaching with Georgia's new gun law. And it's also been set as that you have some opposition to Georgia's constitutional carry law that was just signed into effect.
You know, it got me. I was so upset when I initially did the interview, I've done many interviews with WSB TV here in Atlanta. They're a local station. Typically they're pretty good when it comes to integrity and not trying to misrepresent your words. But I had a new reporter that I'd never worked with, and instead of really checking, like I always check, I always make sure what's the title going to be, and I have a green light authorization. I want to see the final view of what you're going to place on the web and what you're going to talk about on TV. And that was one day I was kind of tired. I didn't really feel like doing it. And I just said, go ahead and run with it. And I paid the price. And he totally misrepresented what we said. Because initially the title was pro-gun group is against the constitutional carry, which is totally untrue. We are the most constitutional carry pro organization that you'll ever find, black or white. Many of our members are heavily involved with 2A community, as I am. So I was very upset that that image and those words are trying to be manipulated and misconstrued about what I believe in, what our organization believes in, more importantly, what our members believe in. So I called the station manager, editor. I said, hey, you need to retract this. But by that time, the damage is done. It's out to thousands and millions of people. But I was very, very upset, and I had to put a statement out on our web, make a statement, on our Facebook, and call a lot of our advertisers and let them know that that was a misrepresentation, and it totally is. We are, just for the record, pro-constitutional carry. I believe, like many Americans in this country, constitutional carry is a value add for us because it allows you to have access to your Second Amendment rights that much quicker. Instead of waiting to go through here in Georgia, concealed carry, which getting your license, but takes an additional 30 days or 45 days. You can instantly, once you buy the gun and you pass that NIC, that background check, and they give you the thumbs up, you can then begin protecting yourself. If you're a single mother living in the hood, or if you're that lady that's walking to her car late at night from the office, you can now automatically and quickly get that gun and start protecting yourself. And so we think it's a value that a lot of Georgians are going to really rally around and definitely believe in, like myself.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. That's actually a friend of the show, actually the guy that started the precursor show, that Sean Sorrentino, sent this article to me first and is like, you got to have Phil on the show, because I guarantee that this was a misquote. And I read a couple of articles that were citing you on this, and yeah, I'm reading it, I'm like, I don't see exactly where he's saying he's not. So I immediately sent you an email and said, hey, can you come on the show and we can talk this out. And so first up, I'm glad I'm not debating you right now. I'm glad we're talking about how we agree on this.
No, I'll say it again. One of the things I'm very, very proud of as being a part of the 2A family, and that's regardless of anybody, any color, anything, any political leaning you have, is that we all have a common thread that really binds us all, and that is belief in the Second Amendment. And that belief in the Second Amendment, in this essence, says that you have the right to protect yourself with a firearm here in America. And constitutional carry is like an automatic connection to our Second Amendment, because it allows us to access the Second Amendment when we are able to buy a gun and not have to go through a bunch of hoops and take a class and get a certification and then get insurance for your gun and all this stuff before you're allowed to get the gun. It simply says here in Georgia, once you pay for that gun and you are past that background check, you are allowed to protect yourself, your family, and your loved ones. And that's something I value and cherish very, very strongly. And I definitely want folks to understand that I'm in lockstep with everyone when it comes to the Second Amendment and constitutional carry nationally, because we have over 22 states now, or
25. We're halfway there.
Yeah, halfway there. So, there's a trend going, and I think it's a good trend for, folks like myself and you that believe in the Constitution, believe in the Second Amendment. So I think we're definitely in the right place.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I mean, especially given, especially in this post-COVID world where certain places are still having various restrictions for classroom size and things like that, and the big rush of people to own guns for the first time. The idea of trying just saying, oh, something bad's happened in my life. My ex is starting to send threats, or my neighbor's starting to act weird, or I'm just concerned about the safety of the world in general. I should go get a gun. Well, in a world where you need to take a safety class and then use that class to apply for a permit, gosh, it could be months before you can find a classroom opening, especially if you can't travel very far because of, work or your mobility.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails, especially from women, black or white, that have went through domestic abuse and went through getting robbed, and they're saying, "Phil, thank God I have a gun. Thank God I've joined your organization. Thank God I now feel comfortable." And with the introduction of the constitutional carry in Georgia now, I'm still getting emails from those ladies saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm glad that I live in Georgia. I'm glad that other women like myself who went through these kind of, horrible situations where guys are beating them and, just really putting them through life-threatening, and sometimes their lives are taken, unfortunately. But now they can fight back. They have a tool. They have that constitutional carry to at least give them a fighting chance. And we advocate and support all women and men that have that issue that they're dealing with. So we all got to stick together on this one and fight hard.
And may I emphasize, just because the question's always there, and I think it doesn't hurt to say it a little bit more, also people of any race, color, and creed as well.
Absolutely. We have we have well over 2,000 white members. We have a growing Latino and Asian membership. We're for everybody. Is the organization catering to African Americans in the foundation? Yes, but we have other folks that join in that really enjoy the conversations, the shooting, the learning together. Because one thing about NAGA, National African Gun Association, when you join, we're going to give you a high five. We're going to give you a big hug, regardless of who you are, what you wear. And we're going to say, welcome, brother, welcome, sister. And that makes folks relax when they join and say, you know what? I like Phil's group. I like NAGA. I'm going to join them and really have an opportunity to learn about guns in a really welcoming environment. And that's something that I really advocate for. And all of our chapter presidents across the country understand that. And they do that. So I think, obviously I'm very biased, but I think my organization is the best place to go to learn about guns for anybody. So we're very proud of that fact.
And I think that was where they got the confusion. So why don't you give us your elevators talk on training and your feelings on that, NAGA's feelings on that?
Absolutely. We have been born, structured, and developed to do really three things. One, to have folks come in and learn about firearms. And we consider everybody coming through the door, and most of our folks, 70% of them, are what we call newbies. We teach you how to hold the gun, which is a good gun for you, isosceles versus Weer'd, how to determine which firearm at home is the best self-defense weapon for you, because everyone is not the same. We're all different sizes, different strength levels. So training and education is something we really advocate and push. And when I say education, not only do you learn about the how a gun is used, but we also really stress, if you're a NAGA member, you should know the regional and national laws to a certain degree. You should, when someone says red flag laws or ghost guns, you should have a working knowledge, being a NAGA member, what that really entails. If someone comes to you and says, hey, you're in Georgia, do you have the right to carry a gun on you out in public? You should know that automatically. So we not only teach you how to shoot, but we teach you how the local laws that you're living in your local city apply to you. Because the worst thing you can do, we believe, is to be walking around as a NAGA member and you're driving with your gun in your car loaded, and you find out that in your particular state, you can't do that. And you get arrested, and you get a felony, or you get some really heavy charges that you have to now fight. So we believe not only do you get the training, but the education is very, very important. And the third thing is that you learn about your history. You learn about the American history of firearms, and you learn about the Black history of arms. So all that stuff comes into play. And we think we have a better gun owner at the end of the day when you become a NAGA member. And I think our numbers speak for themselves. We have over 45,000 members. We've had great enrollment numbers. Sometimes we've had in the past 2,000 people join the organization from a Friday to a Monday morning. That many folks have joined from all over the country. And we're talking Maine, we're talking Texas, we're talking California, Connecticut, South Dakota, Wyoming. We have members in every state of the union. And for that to happen, you have to have a message that goes beyond race, that goes beyond just the tagline that you have for your organization. It has to be some substance in it. It has to be some real character in what you're saying and what you're doing. And I think we're able to do that at a very, very high level, because we have folks that have integrity. We have folks, regardless of their color, that have a passion for the Second Amendment. They have a passion for the Constitution. They have a passion for this country. And that's what's, I think, is the secret in our sauce. And that's why so many folks are joining us and continue to join us, because we have a real care about this country. And we have a vision, and I'm not trying, as I said, I'm not trying to demonize any American. I will never do that. But I just think at the end of the day, some Americans believe that we're better off not having a gun in society. I have a vastly different view. I think we're better as a country when everybody has access to a gun to protect themselves and to protect their country. Otherwise, we're going to end up like Ukraine. All those folks didn't have access to guns. Mm-hmm. At the last minute, they're given guns, but at that point, they're not trained. They're not really steady. So it's a great place to be in America, and to understand that we have certain liberties here that other folks don't have in other parts of the world, and we should really cherish that and fight to maintain that at all costs.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm glad we also couldn't agree more with the benefits of a constitutional carry. Thank you so much for coming on the show and clearing the air, Phillip Smith of the National African American Gun Association. Thanks for having me. I love talking to you guys.
I'm really glad that he cleared that up, because I saw that article. And there were a lot of people who were going, what the heck? Why would they say this? I thought NAGA was pro-gun, and I was baffled as well. It's like, this doesn't seem like them. And so I'm really glad that he had the opportunity to clear that up. And yeah, this is one of the many reasons that when you do an interview, unless you really know the person interviewing you treat it hostile, Mm-hmm. I record all of my conversations with the media just in case it's used in a way like Katie Couric did, with deceptive editing. And so this was the written version of that.
But yeah, no, I can't believe how dishonest this was. Because this was absolutely hostile reporting, because I was telling Phillip after we got done, I was saying, look, I can't believe they did this to you, because I purposely, when we talked for a little bit before I started recording, but I specifically did not mention this article. I sent a copy of the article to him so he'd know what I'd be referencing, but we didn't talk about that until I started recording. And I was prepared to go one of two ways. I was hoping it was this, which was, they totally misquoted us. But I was also always potential to get we're opposed to this for X reason. Okay. And now it's a debate, and a friendly debate, because, he's on our side. This is, if we differ a little bit on one thing, that's not enough to burn a friendship. They're not about purity tests. But it is something good to spend a little time and convince somebody that if someone's mostly on your side but they're totally wrong on something, that's a time for a friendly debate. But it turned out he was all wrong. And I told him, I said, if I had asked you about this and you just played games and kind of waffled around with it and all that, I would have asked you outright, hey, Phillip Smith, does NAGA oppose constitutional carry? Yes or no? Because that's a serious thing. And clearly he did not say that, because he is in favor of constitutional carry and has always been in favor of constitutional carry. And the article cites a whole bunch of things on him talking about them being pro-training, which, hey, guess what? I'm also pro-constitutional carry, and I'm also pro-training. I'm just not for mandatory training. And so they just decided to take those straight data points and draw a beautiful curve in between them instead of a straight line. And it just dishonest. And that's absolutely why, Aaron, you always record when you're doing interviews. And I've heard a couple that have gone sideways, and it's a smart thing to do.
Yeah. Patrons of my Patreon. I do have one. It's been a rough couple of years, honestly. But there was one guy, I'm not even gonna list his name, he's not worth it, but he was a student at UCLA, and he wanted to talk to me, and I took time out of my busy schedule to talk to him, and then he just It was such a bad faith interview. Oh my God.
I will just say, to further also get him, is he clearly had no idea who you were besides just he Googled something and whatever it was, you popped up high up on the search term, and whatever showed up in enough for him to get an email address to address you was all he knew. He knew nothing about, like, he didn't even know you were the founder. He just knew that you were associated with Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols. I don't even know if he knew that you were associated with both of them. And yeah, so this is like someone who was heavily unprepared, had no idea what he was talking about, really didn't know the field of. He knew his anti-gun talking points, but he didn't know really did any red teaming towards what the pro-gun people thought. And yeah, and to do all of that and then just not use any of it. I found your reality disquieting, so I substituted my own.
Pivoting from a state with good gun laws, Georgia, to a state with terrible gun laws, New York. David is here to talk about what happens when you're a gun owner in New York and you die.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. I've spoken about New York State and New York City gun laws in the past. Even though I moved away from there almost 5 years ago, they've reached out to complicate my life once again. Earlier this month, my uncle passed away. He lived in New York City and owned some firearms he wanted me to have. In this series of segments, I'm going to discuss some of the legal background and what it took to get my uncle's firearms home to Tennessee. Hopefully, this story will have a happy ending. Keep in mind, the laws I'm going to reference are not, as the sponsors would have you believe, to keep the populace safe. Their purpose is to crush the firearms community and drive them out of the city and state. An important detail to understand is that in order to even possess a firearm in New York City, the possessor must have the appropriate firearm license. I discussed these a while back in ACP episode 18. For a quick review, subject to limited exceptions, possession of a handgun, rifle, or shotgun in New York City requires a license for handguns or a permit for rifles and shotguns issued by the New York Police Department. New York City issues several different handgun licenses with varying restrictions. Refer back to episode 18 for detail on those. The rifle-shotgun permit is issued for the possession and purchase of rifles and shotguns in the city of New York. This list of licenses doesn't touch on the time-consuming, expensive, and frustrating process of actually applying for a firearms license in New York City, which includes several in-person visits to one police plaza in Manhattan. Another aspect of New York firearm law is particularly cruel. Following the death of a handgun permit holder, the estate administrator or executor has 15 days to legally dispose of any firearms through sale, transfer to another licensed individual, transfer out of state through legal channels, or by surrendering them to the police. The 15 days only applies to handguns, aka firearms in New York law. According to Section 10-304 of the New York City Administrative Code, the following applies to long guns. According to Section 10304 of New York City Administrative Code, the following applies to long guns. Quote, notwithstanding any other provision of this section concerning the transfer, receipt, acquisition, or any other disposition of a rifle or shotgun, a rifle and shotgun permit shall not be required for the passing of a rifle or shotgun upon the death of an owner to his or her heir or legatee, whether the same be by testamentary bequest or by the laws of intestacy, except that the person who shall so receive or acquire said rifle or shotgun shall be subject to all other provisions of this chapter. Provided further that if the heir or legatee of the owner of such rifle or shotgun does not qualify to possess same under this chapter, the rifle or shotgun may be possessed by the heir or legatee for the purpose of sale as otherwise provided herein for a period not exceeding 180 days, or for such further limited period beyond the 180 days as may be approved by the Commissioner, said extensions in no event to exceed a total of 90 days. End quote. After that 15 or 180-day window, any handguns or long guns must be surrendered to the police. If no disposition is made within 1 year, they will be declared nuisance firearms and destroyed. Getting a surrendered gun back from the police within that year can also be a challenge. This was the situation with my Uncle Dan's Colt Diamondback revolver. He surrendered his license and, as required by law, the associated handgun near the end of 2019. Then 2020 happened. The NYPD gave him the runaround until they ran out the clock. I'm sure his revolver never made it to secure storage and is now in the private collection of an officer in that department. This is what my aunt now has to deal with following the death of her husband of 47 years. I've had people say things such as, "Just drive up there, put the guns in your car and drive home. Once they're out of the city, what are they going to do?" That might be fine for me, but it may put my aunt in the position of being unable to explain the legal disposition of her husband's firearms to an unsympathetic NYPD. I'm not willing to leave her holding that bag. That's where things stand right now. His funeral was in mid-April, and I'm still gathering information to pass on to my aunt for when she's ready to address this aspect of my uncle's belongings. As I said, hopefully the story has a happy ending. More reports as events warrant.
All those moments will be lost in time like tears in rain.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I get them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Oh, that Diamondback. I've heard similar stories in Massachusetts of guns that manage to go into police evidence lockers, and then the police don't want to give it back, and you finally get a court order to get it back, and I don't know what happened. This evidence locker is empty. I don't know. And just, it was a really, really cool gun. And so, somebody decided that somebody's sticky fingers got a hold of it. So this is, obviously you just heard my interview with Phillip Smith, and we were talking about like the problems that come with having a concealed carry permit and how much that can slow down someone who might need a gun on them right now from actually getting there. And New York and Massachusetts and Illinois are one step worse in the fact that you need to jump through all those hoops that you might, what in a normal state you might have to do to get your concealed carry permit just to own a gun. And then issues like failing to renew or not being able to renew a permit suddenly makes you go just overnight from a legal gun owner to an illegal gun owner. Just gun doesn't even need to be on you, don't need to be carrying it concealed, just it's in your possession, and yet now your permit is expired. Tough luck for you. And it's no fun in Massachusetts, especially since they take 3 times the legal limit to renew permits. And so even if you get well ahead of things and submit all your paperwork early, it's still, you could be going around months with an expired permit.
What do you mean 3 times the legal limit? I don't understand.
So in Massachusetts, it is, you're supposed to get your when you submit all of your paperwork for for either an application for a permit or renewal of a permit, you're supposed to either get that permit or get a letterhead that denies that states why you're being denied a permit within 30 days. And the last 2 times I have renewed, it has been closer to 90. And so that means that like I have frequently put in my renewal a month early. And even then it's been like I've had 2 months with an expired permit, which is technically legal because if your permit's being processed, you have a 90-day grace period. But boy, it always gets like painfully close, and it's like, what are we doing here? I'm doing it all right, and it's an anti-gun state, so they don't care. And unfortunately, that's the same thing that David's dealing with right now. Is he just wants to do the right thing, and he wants to get guns out of New York. You would think that they would beat a path to his door. Oh, you want to take these out of state? How can we be of service, sir? As a matter of fact, the NYPD's FFL would be more than willing to ship it to whatever gun shop you have that's not in the state of New York. And no, they're just giving a hard time so they can try to turn this collection into manhole covers. So now moving into talking about another miscarriage of justice. A friend of the show, Paloma Capanna, has a new book out. It's called January 6th, 20 Things, or 6 by 20. I sat down with Paloma to talk about this book. I am pleased to welcome back to the Assorted Calibers podcast, Paloma Capanna. And Paloma, you're with 2ampatriot.com, and you've been writing all these great books about the January 6th protest and the aftermath thereof. And there's a lot. I mean, thousands of pages of information and all of that. And you've distilled it down into a book called January 6th, 20 Things You Need to Know. What are the important things that we need to know about the January 6th protest in lieu of all of this information?
And that really is the question. With all the noise going on, with all the media sources you could choose, I really, as an author, was after, how can I make this simple for folks? I've been full-time on January 6th since it happened. As you know, I've written already one previous book, The Events of January 6, 2021, What Impact the Second Amendment Movement, a very academic deep dive, more than 350 footnotes. People tell me they love it, but they can only take it in small doses. And that resonated with me, that y'all, the rest of you, are actually having a daily life. So I challenged myself to say, okay, if I can only tell you 20 things at one page each sentence, how can I boil it down? And I will tell you, this is a much harder book to have written than the first one, because in the first one, I've got space. I can talk in paragraphs, I can talk in chapters, diagrams, attachments. This one, it was, okay, one page, so that if you are at your local rod and gun club and you want to talk about, for example, the Department of Justice launch of their shock and awe campaign to arrest and charge as many as possible after January 6th, all you have to do is turn to fact number 16. You have one page, make 20 photocopies on your photocopier and pass them out at your meeting, right? That's your talking point. So my challenge was for me to give you useful tools to really get a grip on the conversation and try to get people focused on what matters. The book itself breaks down into 5 sections. So there is the U.S. Capitol and grounds, and it starts with the, for some reason, controversial fact that the Capitol was open to the public on January 6th. Isn't it remarkable that just this simple fact is so controversial, and yet there really is no evidence to support its closure? So on that one page, I give you the breakdown that it was at 12:53 p.m. when United States Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund made the decision to close the Capitol because he had received notification of the discovery of a pipe bomb at the Republican and then Democrat national headquarters buildings near the Capitol. So the Capitol was open. A decision is made to close the building, completely unrelated to anything that happened that afternoon. Isn't that a nice, simple fact?
Yeah.
That's what I mean about this book. This is going to be this nice sleeper where people can cut out all the noise and all the drama and all the January 6th committee going on behind closed doors with selected leaks to newspapers they like and say, okay, Section 2, Intelligence and Authority. The intelligence, here's one example, going into the week of January 4th was stable. January 4th being the Monday. You can just simply go straight down the list of the intelligence offices and agencies, their joint communication, and the fact that there were no alerts at all. Again, so simple that you don't even have a comeback for that, do you? Weer'd?
No.
It's just, right? This is what I mean about simple and how we need to take charge of the narrative. Another section, Electoral College Calendar and Procedure. Did you know? Fact number 9, the congressional calendar of January 6th did not comport with the law. Election law, and I cite it for you, allows 5 consecutive days exclusive of Sunday for the counting of the electoral ballots, the lodging of objections, the debate and count of vote, and then going on to the next state in alphabetical order. The calendars of the United States Senate and the United States House only ever afforded 3 hours on the afternoon of Wednesday, January 6th, for the counting of the ballots, and then sent the members home for vacation until Inauguration Day.
And
this vote was doomed before it started.
And I will note that this was the crux of the protest on January 6th anyway, was just simply of the give the procedure its due. And
yes.
That's always the thing that bothers me when they say that, say what you will, agree or disagree with the protesters and what happened that day. When people say that these people were the enemies of democracy, I would argue they were the very opposite. They were just saying, we have concerns, we have issues, look into these.
And I think that's another aspect of things that is being shuffled under the rug is ordinary citizens in America. I'm constantly saying, we know when something unconstitutional or illegal is about to happen. It is genetically programmed into us. It's called a gut reaction. So you take the average person who is not an attorney, who is not an attorney admitted to federal court, who is not an attorney admitted to federal court, who then herself has to go reading sections of the election law she's never seen before to try to ask myself what should have happened that day. And they knew something was off. So here is one of those simple facts, very simple statute sections 13, 14, and 15. It's so nice. You know, I can just put them in single sentences in this book to confirm that your suspicion that something was up with the vote count has a basis in fact. We are not conspiracy theorists. It is a fact that at least 6 states had anticipated making objections to the electoral ballot on the day of January 6th. It was all over every news channel. And persons like Senator Cruz were receiving hideous pushback, including from Senator McConnell. So the Senate, the House knew that the process was not perfunctory, that there were objections to be raised, that the law allowed for the raising of objections, the separating from joint session into the 2 separate chambers, the debate timed at 5 minutes per member, not to exceed 2 hours. So listen to me there when I'm saying for a single state, 2 hours of vote allowed at law, a vote separately in the Senate, separately in the House, everybody coming back to joint session and reporting those vote counts. So the notion that the leaders of the House and the Senate had it scheduled for 3 hours meant it was going to be a fail. You don't need to be an expert in election law going into January 6th. That was your gut instinct kicking in. And this is my book telling you you were right.
Well, that's comforting.
Well,
he says with a sheepish laugh.
I know. And that's what's so sort of interesting, if you will, about my discussion that I'm having with you and with a couple of my other friends of the media and people in the public of all political persuasions is when I say things as simplistically as this, you know, Section 4, the day of January 6th, no arrests were made during the events of January 6th at the U.S. Capitol. Everybody just sort of says, wow, you know, you're right. And then we all just kind of stand there because, well, what's the discussion to be had? Mm-hmm. There were no arrests made. Someone made a decision that there would be no arrests, which meant there was no signaling function that anyone was doing anything illegal. Mm-hmm. There were no handcuffs, no blue lights whirring. Nobody was arrested that day.
And again,
we all then take a moment to think, wow, what does that mean about January 6th? What does that mean about us relative to what was going on the year before? What does that mean relative to people who are still getting indicted? And it's March of 2022. I mean, we're 15 months downstream and the DOJ is still arresting people. What is going on in America? Mm-hmm. But simple truth, no arrests were made during the events of January 6th. These are great talking points for us to photocopy, pass out at parades, throw off the top of buildings.
And since I haven't seen this book yet,
our conversation. Mhm.
And since I haven't seen this book yet,
Yes.
but I will, and I'll be wide open. I have told Paloma off mic that under no circumstances are you to send me one of these books. You'll take my money and you'll like it. But are these also footnoted like your other book, so that if people are incredulous, they can check your work?
Do you know what? They're not. And here's why. I have a few end notes where there are points that I think are a little bit harder to research, like a defendant's federal case number. So I do provide those at the end. These things are so available on the internet that you can take any sentence out of this book, drop it into the Google search engine.
Yep.
And you have all kinds of resources to read from.
So not even needed.
No, it truly isn't. And if I find out that I have just so many people saying, well, I also want an annotated version, and you really see how many sources I'm using over here, there will be people knocking at the door saying, Paloma, you need to get out more. So, in part, it's self-preservation of you don't need to know that I have 57 resources for probably every sentence in this book. These are the simple truths simply boiled down from facts that are readily available. So it's sort of me versus the January 6th committee. That's in part what I feel like it's coming down to, is they're operating behind closed doors. They're doing selective leaks. Or take a book, like in the shorthand I call it 6 by 20. Take a book like 6 by 20, $5, throw me $5 to get you this book. Take a look at this, and then you go ahead and do some research. Do you want the person who's out front answering media questions, available to respond to your emails, using sources that you can readily find? Or do you want people operating as if it's Moscow in Washington, D.C.?
And also, I will say, at that price, it's pretty good too. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to buy at least 4 of them. I may change my mind between now and then, and go up more. But like, I know for a fact the next time I'm at my gun club, there's a little book rack on there. Yeah, I'll throw one in there. I'll go see if my local library wants one. Then literally for the person that is buying the narrative and saying things that, you can have a differing opinion. I am not saying that, Donald Trump is 100% right, or Joe Biden is 100% right, or any of those things. I'm not taking sides on this. I am just simply saying that there are things that are true and there are things that are demonstrably not true. And right. And that's what we need to be drilling into. So just to give you one more example, in the 5th section, the prosecution, Item 17, plea deals include flipping defendants and offers of witness protection. The U.S. DOJ and the FBI are actually having people sign plea deals where they are turned into confidential informants for the rest of their life. You go ahead and think about how you feel about that. Does that make sense to you in the American system of justice? I've got defendants' names in here. You can go to your computer, go ahead, look them up. Again, as I said, I gave you the case numbers because those are a little harder for a layman to find. You just plug in your case number. You can look at these documents. They are public record. Criminal prosecutions are public record. But we need to be having a conversation about prosecutorial overreach, manipulation of ordinary Americans, the kind of pressure a person is under when they are charged with federal felonies. And so much of their life has ended, including, if they take a plea deal or they're convicted, their Second Amendment rights terminated permanently in all 50 states and all U.S. territories. But we're not going to get to that conversation if we cannot even establish what are the basic facts about what happened. And this has nothing, 6 by 20 has nothing to do with politics. And everything to do with what are some of the simple truths we have to start looking at to have a discussion, even around our right to privacy, our Second Amendment rights, our equal protection rights under the law, who's being prosecuted, who's not being prosecuted, why was only one person offered witness protection, and who the heck is John Schaefer, the one guy who's offered witness protection?
That's the conversation that we need to be having.
And furthermore, if you are someone that is perfectly happy to see Trump gone and off in the wind and hopefully never to see another day of public office for the rest of his life, just because they use this, these tools and these manipulations of the media against the people that were protesting that day, what makes you think they're not going to use it against you?
100% yes. Fact 15, the only shot fired on January 6th was the one that killed Ashley Babbitt.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only shot fired. What if that only shot fired is you and you're wearing a pink knit cap? Mm-hmm. I'm still going to be as concerned about that shot fired because it's a question of policing, police being under control of the executive branch. We always have to be cautious as Americans how much power is getting consolidated behind presidents and governors and even county executives and mayors in our municipalities. So the facts that I've listed here, I hope can spark some actual conversations. What's one fact that I didn't put in that book, though, that we might want to touch on for just a minute, because I know listeners are tuning into Assorted Caliber's podcast for critical updates concerning January 6th. We have more than 35 Americans sitting in jail. It's now 15 months out. And some of these folks have had trial dates adjourned, rescheduled, adjourned. And some of the trial dates are out into December 2022. And some of the defendants do not have any trial dates scheduled at all.
Actually, as a lawyer, Paloma, I got to ask real quick. Are some of, I could imagine some of these people aren't even looking at a maximum sentence of 15 months, are they?
No, they're looking at maximum sentences into the decades.
Okay, so
the charges are piled up.
Okay, so we're still not in danger of some of the more minor stuff that even if they're found guilty and given the maximum sentence, they could still just be let go that next day on time served.
No.
Okay.
No, not for the incarcerated defendants. No, I mean, someone like Jessica Watkins, Kelly Meggs, Kenneth Harrelson, those are three of my core defendants. My studies and detail work has been largely focused on defendants who are accused of being oath keepers. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, has also been arrested, indicted, put into prison, denied pretrial release. And they became my core focus on the afternoon of January 6th, because as I watched things unfold on TV, my instinct was the camera footage, the news coverage, no matter what station I was on, was excessively obsessed with Oath Keeper patches, T-shirts, baseball caps. And when you consider that there were roughly 25 persons who have been accused of being Oath Keepers at the Capitol on January 6th, out of a crowd of more than, by some estimates, 10,000 at the Capitol, or at this point, more than 800 people being charged, that is a minute fraction. I should not have been seeing that kind of statistically unbalanced coverage. So again, I'm back to that gut instinct as an American. I mean, that afternoon, I pretty much called my Kevin and said, guess what? We're not going to be going to the beach too much because we've got a problem. We've got, I think, without question, U.S., FBI, etc., name your alphabet agencies, going into January 6th, who the indictments show were already tracking people with facial recognition software at MAGA 1, at MAGA 2, and really compromising our First Amendment rights of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly at a level that is probably the natural evolution post 9/11, but has reached a pinnacle that I'm surprised we are not out in the streets demonstrating on a regular basis.
I mean, it's just breathtaking. And I think it's a great thing to do is, swing by 2 a.m. Patriots, pick up a copy of your new book, January 6, 20 Things, 6 by 20. And grab that, and they are cheap enough just for them to find themselves in convenient places where inquiring minds may get a hold of them.
And just to give the listeners to Assorted Caliber's podcast a little sprinkling of something kind of uplifting, my works are getting like skinnier and skinnier. So the first book, Events of January 6, What Impact the Second Amendment Movement, is rather large. It's very beefy. It has side tabs and so forth. 6 by 20, nice and skinny. So I've nicknamed it the Skinny. The Mini Skinny will be next.
Okay.
And that is January 6 questions. So with 6 by 20, you have the 20 things you need to know. January 6 questions will be 6 questions that, by the way, the January 6th committee is not even asking.
Always an uploading note with you, Paloma.
Well, I'm hoping that people will join me on this quest for the truth. And just to get one philosophical, up in the ozone kind of comment, I take my comfort that the truth exists independently of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. It's there. It's there for us to arrive at it so that we can make the kinds of good decisions that we make here in this country through discussion, through debate, through bill drafting, through voting, so that when the country has gone completely off the rails, we do somehow manage to get back to who we are, to our core essence. And I fully believe that we can get there, but on this one, we've got to do a little bit of digging together. So book 3, which will be a mini skinny, is going to be my invitation to you to join me on this quest. And Kevin and I have started looking at some camper vans, and we're thinking we might just take that one out on the road and just have conversations all over America.
Oh, I look forward to that. Thank you so much for coming on, Paloma. It's always wonderful talking to you.
Thanks, Weird Beard. Hello to Erin. Hello to all the listeners. Thank you to everybody who's trying to find the truth.
I know I mentioned after the last Paloma interview that I had gotten a chance to read my copy of this book. Well, I sat down. I actually sat down today and realized, oh man, I should have read this a previous day. But I sat down and read it, and I gotta say, this is a really, really just nice little like primer debate log. I don't know the best way to describe it, but essentially it's just a whole bunch of just really, really good facts that are all on very, very solid ground about the January 6th case. And I gotta say, I know Paloma said in the interview that there are no references, and evidently for Paloma, no references means that there is like 2 pages of footnotes at the back, and she is citing actual like laws, like federal and district laws, as well as citing various websites where she got the information that she is citing, and then also has like copies of permits and legal documents and things like that, so you can actually see the official document. Right there on the page. So she says there's no footnotes, but oh no, she's got stacks and stacks of receipts. It is just not like her previous book where it is like as thick as your wrist, all the footnotes and references. And with that, I would like to thank each and every one of our listeners, and a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends both online and off.
I got a blog. It's called WeirDworlds.com, and you can hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
I got blogs. You know where to find me.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our lovely music.
I used to think that I could talk pretty well, but tonight he's doing all the talking, and I can't sentence properly. Our words, verbs, sorted properly podcast night.
Good night, everybody.